Hey guys, so today we're going to spend some time talking a little bit about our third president, Thomas Jefferson. So Thomas Jefferson is president from 1801 to 1809, and there's something kind of important about Thomas Jefferson's election that I think is worth mentioning. So Thomas Jefferson is a Democratic Republican. When he comes into office, it is a change of power, right? John Adams had been a Federalist, and typically in U.S. history or world history, not U.S. history, in world history, when there is a change of power between two political factions, it's not going to be an easy change. It's not going to be peaceful. In fact, it might even be bloody, right? Think about the French Revolution. They cut off the king's head, right? So when Thomas Jefferson comes into office, we have one political party willingly giving up office, not, happy about it, but still giving up office, and another political party taking over. This is actually called the Revolution of 1800 because of this, because it's a peaceful exchange of power, and it's going to be the first of many times in American history that we have this. But it's still very new for world history at this time. And Thomas Jefferson kind of emphasized this in his inaugural address, where he said, "We are all Democrats. We are all Federalists. We are all Republicans. We are all Federalists." Kind of the idea being that we're just Americans, right? So it doesn't really matter what our political party is. And so as Thomas Jefferson is president, he's going to try and address the different parts of our country and kind of how he's going to fix them or make them better. It's important to keep in mind that as a Democratic Republican, he does not like big government, and we're going to kind of see how that plays out as well. So I'm going to put on my Jefferson hat here, and we are going to get started. So the first thing that he does is immediately tries to kind of undo some of what he sees as problems of the past, namely the Federalist policies that were in place. So he kind of wants to undo those policies, right? Kind of fix those up. And this is kind of the first immediate thing he does as president. So the first thing he does is allows the Alien and Sedition Acts to expire. They had been set up under John Adams, and you'll remember they limited free speech. However, what he is going to do is say, you know what? These are not good. They were set to expire in 1801, so he let them expire. The second thing that he did is cut the budget. So again, this kind of goes back into Hamilton's economic plan. He didn't like all the things that Hamilton were doing. He thought the government was spending too much money. So he cuts both the social budget and the military budget. It's important to remember those two things because those are going to come back into play. The last thing he does is downsizes the national bank. So again, not a fan of Hamilton's economic plan, decides that he wants to stop kind of the way the bank had been working, and so he cuts back on that a little bit. So that's how he addresses the past. The second thing he does is addresses the present, and this is mainly going to be foreign policy. There's a lot of international crises in play while Jefferson is president, namely the fact that Great Britain and France are once again at war, because they're always at war, and they're kind of like pulling America in each direction. Like the British are like, you should ally with us. The French are saying, you should ally with us. Think about what Washington and Adams had done, right? It says neutrality, we're not going to do this. And so during Adams' administration, both of these groups had started attacking American ships on the high seas, right? And so they're still doing this. The French are mad that we won't ally with them. The British are doing something called impressment, where basically what this means is that they are boarding American ships, and if the American ships are have good able-bodied men on them, they're going to force those men to be in the British Navy. This is kind of a slap in the face, right? Like, we're not British anymore. You can't make us be in your Navy, right? But that's what they were doing. Well, Jefferson kind of throws a temper tantrum. He's like, well, fine, you won't leave us alone. We're just not going to trade with you anymore, right? So he passes something called the Embargo Acts. The Embargo Acts is where Jefferson bans trades with both countries. The way I think about the Embargo Acts is it's kind of like how when I make you mad and you tell me, well, I'm just not going to do this work, well, it's not hurting me, right? Like, okay, I don't have to grade it, right? But it does hurt you, right? You get a 0 on it. So you telling me you're not going to do work, you think that that's hurting me, but it's really just hurting yourself. That's exactly what Jefferson did, right? So by banning trade with both of these countries, Britain and France were like, oh, okay, we don't need you, right? Like, we're not hurting. However, in New England, where their business was pretty much all trading, merchants, that sort of thing, it really hurt the economy of the Northeast and New England up there. This policy is going to be incredibly unpopular, and it really shows Jefferson's ineptitude at dealing with foreign affairs, particularly with these major countries like Britain and France. So if you look at this political cartoon here, this is called the Oh Grab Me. It's the name of this cartoon. So that tortoise is the Oh Grab Me. All right, that seems like a weird phrase, right? But look at what the tortoise is doing. He's literally grabbing this guy, right? Biting him on the butt. Who is this guy, do you think? Look at him. What is he doing? He's got this barrel, and he looks like he's trying to get towards the harbor. So maybe he's a merchant trying to take his barrel to that ship in the harbor there, right? So the tortoise is holding him back. The tortoise is the embargo, or the Oh Grab Me, right? Because if you look at that word, embargo, spelled backwards, it is Oh Grab Me, right? So this political cartoon just kind of shows this foreign policy and how unpopular it really was. But that's not to say Jefferson was inept in all foreign policies. In fact, there's one part where he did kind of okay, and that is his policy with the Barbary pirates. So here's the deal. Out in the Mediterranean, some of our ships, trade out in the Mediterranean. There's these pirates from what are called the Barbary states. These are places like Morocco, then Tripoli, parts of North Africa up there. These are mostly Muslim pirates. And what they had been doing is seizing U.S. ships, and they would hold the crews for ransom, saying, you have to pay us this amount of money or we're going to sell your men into slavery. Adams and Washington had been paying it. Jefferson was having none of it, right? He was willing to pay until they increased the price that they were asking. And then Jefferson was like, nah, man, we don't negotiate with terrorists, right? Because that's essentially what was happening. So instead, he declares war on the Barbary states because these pirates were kind of supported by the Barbary states. So Jefferson sends the Navy to Tripoli and starts blockading Barbary ports. Now, there's a slight problem with this. What had Jefferson just cut? The budget to the Navy, right? However, it turns out to be pretty good. We fight over there for a few years. We don't gain a whole lot. If you look at this picture here, this is actually one of the battles where the USS Philadelphia, which is the big ship in the picture, was captured by Barbary pirates. A group of American sailors did not like the fact that this American ship was going to be used against Americans, so they actually snuck on board the ship at night and it blew it up, set off some gunpowder and explosives. It was called, by Horatio Nelson, it was called one of the most daring and courageous acts of any military. We do end up signing a favorable peace treaty in 1805. However, we still pay the $60,000 to get our sailors out of slavery. So we end up paying the tribute anyway, right? So it didn't accomplish a whole lot. But it does kind of solve some of those issues. Madison is going to have to deal with this again when he becomes president, but for the most part, it solved the problem. The last thing that Jefferson addresses is the future, okay? Particularly what we're going to be talking about is westward expansion, all right? So the first thing he does is realizes that communication between the 13 main states and the frontier is really hard come by, right? It's hard to travel in this time period. Communication's slow, transportation's slow. So he decides that what we need to do is to build a road through the Western Territory. So Daniel Boone, yes, Daniel Boone is a real historical figure. Think about the guy with his coonskin hat, right? So he and his group of men help build this road. They kind of plot through the Appalachian Mountains up through North Carolina into Western Territory. Specifically, it's going to go up through Kentucky and Tennessee. Okay, it starts through Tennessee up through Kentucky. The point of this, as I said, is to improve communication and transportation out west. So that's the first thing. The second thing is the Louisiana Purchase. So here's this is an interesting part of American history, okay? So the city of New Orleans had been controlled by Spain when Napoleon took over France and went to France. We, the American government, decided we wanted to control New Orleans. It's a trading hub, right? So Jefferson sends his Secretary of State, James Madison, to France, and he gives him a deal. He says, okay, you have $10 million. Negotiate with Napoleon and see if you can buy the city of New Orleans for $10 million. So Madison gets there. And Napoleon is like, nah, man, I'll make you an even better deal, right? I got this whole Louisiana territory. If you look down here, you see the whole Louisiana territory, right? Look, I just had a revolution in Haiti. I don't want to deal with it anymore. I'll sell you the whole thing for 15 mil. We were going to buy just a city for 10 million. And you want us to buy like all of this land for 15 million? You can't pass that deal up. That's a good deal. Jefferson jumps on board, right? This is a great deal, of course. There's a problem with this, though. Nowhere in the Constitution does it say that the president has the power to do something like this. Jefferson's pretty sure what he's doing is unconstitutional. He is definitely expanding the power of the federal government. But he does it anyway, right? This is a guy who didn't think the federal government should have power. But he uses his power as government to do something that goes against his belief of strict construction, that you can't do it if it's not in the Constitution. And a lot of people call him a hypocrite for this. It actually kind of hurts his reputation. Well, of course, now that we've got all this territory, we've got to figure out what to do with it, right? So Jefferson hires a couple men, a guy named Meriwether Lewis and a guy named William Clark, to lead an expedition throughout the land to explore it, kind of map it out, see what they can find out. It's a scientific expedition primarily. So these are those two men down here at the bottom, Meriwether Lewis and William Clark, as I said. And so they go out and explore the Louisiana Territory. So Lewis and Clark's expedition was nicknamed the Corps of Discovery. So right there it tells you what their ideal is, right? They're discoverers, right? So these guys lead a little over 40 men. It takes a little over 2 years, and they journey through the Louisiana Territory from Missouri way out west. It's about 1,600 miles. That's a lot of territory to cover by foot, right? They actually go a little bit beyond the Louisiana Territory. They end up in Washington State in the Pacific Ocean, or at the Pacific Ocean. So they are able to discover quite a bit. What they're doing as they're going is they're making maps. They're keeping records of the plants and animals that they discover, the Native Americans that they encounter. This is some of the first Native American encounters by white men. So this is a really big deal. It's going to kind of set up our future dealing with Native Americans in the West. You may also know the name Sacagawea because this was a Shoshone, I believe is what her tribe was, woman, who helps guide these guys. It's actually kind of the way it worked out is that she was married to a white man. She actually had a baby with her that she carried on her back, and she helped them navigate through this territory and was kind of her translator when they met with some of the Native American groups. So it's a really big deal. So there's a pretty big significance to this event. It does double the size of the United States, which is a really important thing as we start expanding westward. We're going to see a lot more westward expansion becomes really important to American history. So this is a big deal. So I hope this gives you a good picture of Thomas Jefferson here and what his presidency was like. So I will see you guys in class. Goodbye.